Beginning this evening, we plan to use this portion of the nightly news, which we call Segment 3, for investigative reporting on a regular basis. There are some stories which take a little more time to report, a little more time to tell. Tonight, the first of two special reports on what federal investigators have learned about organized crime, the International Longshoremen's Association, and the Waterfront along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts. Our reporter, Brian Ross.
Tractor trailer is now leaving.
This is a truck hijacking in progress. Police in Dade County, Florida made these pictures as part of an undercover investigation of organized crime activity at the Port of Miami. This doesn't look like a crime, and that's because the hijacking was well arranged by insiders. Someone has picked out the right truck, provided the keys, and made it very easy. You've hijacked trucks on the piers of New York.
Yes, I do.
This man says officers of the Longshoremen's Union helped him hijack trucks for the Mafia family that controls the Brooklyn docks in New York City.
Well, they have access to all the bill of lading, so what's on a truck, what's shipping, what company, what carrier is taking, what load to where, what destination they're going. Now, they're the only ones that could have the information. They'll tell you which ones to take.
On a typical working day, there are hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cargo on the docks of this country. The men who load and unload this cargo are members of the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA. Investigators say it is members of this union who spot the most valuable cargo for the mob and leave it in places where it can be stolen easily. This is an operation controlled for the most part by organized crime, one family, yes. Isn't it? Gambino family.
Yes.
And union officials are the people who are spotting the important loads.
Yes.
They work for the organized crime family?
Of course.
And NBC News found that in port after port, there is little to stand in the mob's way. In New Orleans, one policeman is assigned to patrol 3 miles of waterfront. In Savannah, Georgia, cargo is stacked outdoors, unguarded. In Miami, police found that shippers won't report losses and often discourage police from investigating thefts.
We found intimidation or extortion. People have had their legs broken. Other people have been killed.
Detectives say shippers won't crack down because they fear the ILA and the mob.
At the stage it is now, organized crime can engender more fear and threats than law enforcement can. And effectively, they keep them quieter than we can keep them talking.
A 2-year FBI undercover investigation of the International Longshoremen's Association, codenamed Operation Unirac, shows the union is controlled by 3 Mafia families, the Genovese and Gambino families of New York, and the Marcello family of New Orleans. The boss of that family, Carlos Marcello, the man on the left, has appeared twice before a Miami federal grand jury investigating the Longshoremen's Union. Both times, Marcello refused to answer questions about dock racketeering. He says he is a tomato salesman. In New York, the FBI got a court order to wiretap the phones at this lumber company near the docks in Brooklyn. The company, which sells lumber to shippers, is run by relatives of the president of the Longshoremen's Union in Brooklyn. He is Anthony Scotto, one of the most powerful men in the International Longshoremen's Association. In some circles in New York, Scotto is a respected labor leader who has been appointed to a number of positions in city and state government. But NBC News has learned that Scotto is a major target of the federal investigation of ILA ties to organized crime. In a 1976 confidential report to the governor of Florida, a joint federal and state task force on organized crime listed Anthony Scotto as a capo, a captain in the Carlo Gambino Mafia family. Scotto has denied any ties to organized crime. He refused to be interviewed by NBC News. Despite its long history of corruption, the ILA has been able to play a major role in Democratic Party politics.
I see a nation in the future that's strong.
When Jimmy Carter came to Brooklyn last fall to campaign, it was Anthony Scotto who organized the rally for Carter. Hundreds of longshoremen were ordered by the union to leave their jobs and report to the Carter rally. And Scotto presented Carter with a present, a gold-colored cargo hook. All of this took place at the same time Scotto was under investigation and agents were following him. Carter may not have known that. But if federal investigators are right, the mob's domination of the docks and the International Longshoremen's Union gives it influence in many important places. Brian Ross, NBC News, New York.
On segment 3 this evening, the second of Brian Ross's two-part report on how gangsters dominate the docks in some of this country's biggest East Coast and Gulf ports, and how big shipping companies pay them off to avoid trouble.
This is a scene from On the Waterfront, a movie made in 1954 about corruption on the docks.
Wait a minute, you! You take the good goods away and the kickbacks and the shakedown cabbage and the pistoleros, and you're nothing. Your guts is all in your wallet and your trigger finger, you know that? You rattled on us, Kerry.
Marlon Brando played the role of a longshoreman fighting union corruption, a real-life problem then and a real-life problem now. The Port of Miami. Nothing moves here, no one works here without the approval of racketeers and hoodlums, many of them officers of the International Longshoremen's Association. For years, the only way to do business here has been the mob way, and the shipping companies have gone along with it, become part of it. But 2 years ago, one member of this closed society, a Miami shipping executive, went too far. He hired this man to kill someone in a business dispute.
He wanted me to kill the president of the Bank of Honduras.
What was the arrangement that you worked out?
Well, he told me he'll pay my expenses and all, plus $10,000 when I get back. And he told me I told him if I could put a gun on one of his ships to get there. He said no. He told me, I think it's better if you get a nice pick and stick him in the throat.
But the murder never happened. This man was working for the police. The shipping executive was caught, convicted, and began talking about how the mob runs the docks in this country. For the first time, the FBI had a high-level informant on the waterfront. And FBI agents, introduced as the informant's business associates, were in the same room when mob figures came to collect tens of thousands of dollars in extortion payments. Payments from some of the biggest shipping companies in the country. The FBI organized what came to be known as Operation Unirac. The government says Operation Unirac is the biggest move ever against union racketeering. Operating out of Miami, the undercover FBI agents went to every major port from New Orleans to New York, gathering evidence against organized crime figures, officers of the Longshoremen's Union, and shipping company executives. Grand juries here in Miami and in New York began hearing this evidence 7 months ago. Major shipping companies were ordered to produce their records, and government auditors have been going through them, looking for hidden payments to organized crime. Many shipping company executives refused to cooperate with the government. This one ran away from photographers. Now, NBC News has learned that a number of shipping executives will be indicted soon, along with union officers and mob figures. Under all this government pressure, some shipping companies have begun to disclose illegal payments in documents filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. One shipper, United States Lines, a big steamship company, said it had paid $34,500 to resolve labor problems, but declined to say what the problems were or to whom the payments were made. Another company, Sealand Service, a subsidiary of R.J. Reynolds, admitted it too had made payments in violation of federal law, but did not say what the payments were for or who received them. Companies disguise payoffs to waterfront gangsters in other ways. FBI agents found that many essential dock services, such as the repair of shipping containers, are controlled by mob fronts. The scheme is, companies are forced to pay for work never done and men never hired. Investigators say some of the country's leading corporations have regularly made just such payments, knowing full well they are to the Mafia.
Well, someone once said, and I'm afraid there's a great deal to confirm it, that there's no morality in a boardroom.
Aaron Cohn is the director of the New Orleans Crime Commission. Why would the officers and directors of major, legitimate shipping companies even sit down with corrupt union officials or organized crime figures?
It costs thousands of dollars every day to have a ship at dock. Any delay and getting that ship back out again. It means a terrific bite out of profit.
So it's cheaper for them to go ahead with work, make the payoffs, pay the bribes, than to fight it.
Exactly.
The cost of all this is enormous. Millions and millions of dollars. In effect, the Mafia and the Longshoremen's Union have been able to put their own tax on every item moving in or out of the many ports they control. And the FBI's investigation has shown that in case after case, major corporations have gone along with bribes, kickbacks, and payoffs, and simply let the consumer pay the price. Brian Ross, NBC News.
Our segment 3 tonight is titled The Waterfront Mob Continued. When we began our special segment 3 report some time ago, the first investigative series we ran was called The Waterfront Mob, reported by Brian Ross. Well, today, the FBI was arresting people in 6 cities, 21 arrested so far, officials of the International Longshoremen's Association and shipping company executives, people charged with protection payoffs on ports on the Gulf and the Atlantic. A major move against organized crime. Again tonight, Brian Ross.
This is George Barone, the man who runs the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA, in Miami. And one of the men the FBI arrested today in a roundup of high-ranking ILA officers and shipping executives. The arrest took place before dawn, when most of those arrested were at home, asleep. These are the men the government says have made the payoff, the kickback, the threat of violence, the way of doing business in ports all along the Atlantic and Gulf coasts. Among the people indicted, the owners of shipping businesses, who not only face jail terms, but seizure of their businesses by the government under a new federal racketeering law. This is a copy of the government's indictment. It charges 22 people in all with being part of a conspiracy to corruptly control and influence the waterfront industry through illegal acts including payoffs, kickbacks, embezzlements, corrupt buying and selling of contracts, extortion, threats, and intimidation. The indictment is the result of a 3-year undercover FBI operation, codenamed Operation Unirac. Operation Unirac began here, in the port of Miami, in 1975. 5 FBI agents were able, for the first time, to successfully infiltrate the waterfront rackets. Posing as stevedores, freight forwarders, shipping executives, the agents witnessed and made payoffs to ILA officers and racketeers. Some of the payoffs were made at the Miami airport. Others down the hall from the ILA office, in this men's room. Thousands of dollars were exchanged here. And in the ILA office itself, more payoffs. In all, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to buy labor peace on the docks. When the federal grand jury began to investigate, the strategy was not to put pressure on the racketeers themselves, but instead to pressure accountants for waterfront companies to testify. These are the men who had to phony up the books to hide the payoffs. In many cases, the strategy worked. A number of the conversations secretly taped by the FBI had to do with this man, New York ILA official Anthony Scotto. Scotto was an important figure in Jimmy Carter's presidential campaign in New York, and he is one of the closest political associates of New York Governor Hugh Carey. Scotto was not indicted today, but federal investigators say he is a target of the grand jury investigating the waterfront in New York. The key to the entire investigation is this man, Joseph Teitelbaum, a Miami shipping executive and FBI operative. Teitelbaum is the man who taught the FBI how things work on the docks. It was Teitelbaum who gave the FBI agents their cover so they could work secretly. And for almost 2 years, every conversation Teitelbaum had on the docks about payoffs, bribes, violence, every conversation was recorded and is now a major part of the indictment. Teitelbaum has been under round-the-clock protection by 17 U.S. Marshals. He was asked yesterday, before the indictments came out, whether he was afraid.
If I were afraid, I wouldn't be here working, would I?
Much depends on the testimony of Joe Teitelbaum, and that may be in jeopardy. NBC News has learned that Teitelbaum will lose his U.S. Marshals Guard detail starting on Monday. On the very day of the indictments, the Justice Department told Teitelbaum it was getting too expensive to protect him. So after 3 years and millions of dollars to run one of the most extensive investigations of organized crime ever, the government has decided to leave its chief witness on his own. And he's told his friends he may not testify. Already, Operation Unirac has its first big problem. Brian Ross, NBC News, Miami.